Hey, tonight we explore the sunlit streets and marble columns of ancient Athens, where democracy was born and philosophy flourished beneath the watchful gaze of Athena. The year is 432 BCE, the golden age of Pericles, when the Parthenon stands, newly completed atop the Acropolis. The air carries whispers of Socrates' questions and the rhythm of sandaled feet on stone pathways. You're about to walk among olive groves and temples, to feel the warm Mediterranean breeze against your skin, to become, for a time, a citizen of the cradle of Western civilization. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. Athens awaits. If you're enjoying this peaceful moment, please like, share, and subscribe. What time is it where you are? Which city are you watching from tonight? Dim your lights, turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and settle in. Let your thoughts wander gently into the past. Dawn breaks over the sleeping city of Athens, and you stir beneath a woven woolen blanket. Your eyes open to the soft golden light filtering through the small window of your modest but comfortable home near the base of the Acropolis. The limestone walls around you hold the lingering coolness of night, a pleasant contrast to the warmth that will soon blanket the city. You can already sense it will be a bright, clear day, perfect for your errands in the agora. Your feet touch the cool, packed earth floor as you rise, stretching arms toward the timber ceiling. The air carries the distant crowing of roosters and the subtle fragrance of olive wood from the small shrine in the corner where a clay oil lamp still flickers before a small statue of Athena, the goddess whose temple crowns the city's sacred hill. You pause to touch your fingers to your lips, then extend them toward the statue, a small morning devotion to the protector of your city. The linen chiton you slip over your body feels soft against your skin, worn smooth from many washings in the spring. You secure it at both shoulders with simple bronze pins, letting the fabric drape in elegant folds to your knees. A rope belt cinches the garment at your waist. The rhythm of dressing is as familiar as breathing motions your hands have performed since childhood. In the small courtyard at the center of your home, your family's single slave, an elderly Thracian woman captured in a war long ago, has already kindled the cook fire. She nods to you respectfully as you emerge, and hands you a wooden bowl of barley porridge sweetened with a drizzle of precious honey. Sitting on a stone bench beside the tiny herb garden, thyme and oregano releasing their scent in the warming air, you take your morning meal. The porridge is warm and hearty, nourishing you for the day ahead. A few dried figs and a sip of watered wine complete your breakfast. As you eat, you hear the household stirring, the soft voices of your wife giving instructions to the slave about woolwork for the day, the padding of your children's bare feet on stone. Your son, nearly 12 years old, will soon depart for his lessons with the grammatistas to learn his letters, poetry, and arithmetic. Your young daughter remains at home, learning the arts of household management from her mother. Such is the way of Athenian life. Your son preparing for citizenship, your daughter for marriage and household mastery. You step out into the narrow street, sunlight now fully illuminating the city. Your sandals, simple leather soles with thongs between your toes and wrapped around your ankles, make a soft slapping sound against the packed dirt road. The street is already alive with fellow Athenians beginning their day. A neighbor nods in greeting, his beard neatly trimmed in the fashion favored since Pericles made it popular. May the gods grant you good fortune today, he calls, and you return the blessing. The route to the agora takes you downhill, through winding streets barely wide enough for two men to walk side by side. The scent of the city envelops you, olive, oil and wood smoke, the occasional pungent waft from drainage channels, freshly baked bread from a nearby bakery. Children dart between houses, playing knucklebones or chasing each other with sticks fashioned as mock swords. An old woman sweeps her doorstep with a bundle of twigs, casting suspicious eyes at passers-by. As you descend toward the city centre, the streets widen slightly, and you pass a small roadside shrine where someone has left a modest offering of flowers and barley cakes. The presence of the gods is everywhere in Athens, in the temples that rise above the city rooftops, in the small household shrines like your own, in these public altars at crossroads and street corners. You touch your fingers to your heart as you pass, acknowledging the divine presence that permeates all things. Rounding a corner, your eyes lift to the Acropolis rising majestically above the city. The morning light catches the massive Doric columns of the Parthenon, making the marble seem to glow with inner radiance. Even though you've seen it countless times since its completion 5 years ago, the sight still fills you with pride. This magnificent temple, this offering to Athena, represents the greatness of Athens itself. The bronze statue of the goddess, her spear tip visible even from the city below, stands eternal watch over her people. The sounds of the agora reach you before you arrive. The hum of hundreds of voices engaged in commerce and conversation, the heart of Athenian public life. As you enter the sprawling open space, you're immersed in the vibrant energy of your fellow citizens. The agora is bordered by stoas, long colonnaded porches providing shade for merchants and meeting places for philosophers. The painted columns add splashes of red and blue to the scene, contrasting with the whites and creams of buildings and the colourful goods for sale. Your eyes scan the bustling marketplace. Farmers arrange fresh produce on wooden tables, plump figs, olives glistening with oil, bunches of grapes and fragrant herbs. Fishmongers display their morning catch on beds of seaweed, the silver scales catching the light. Craftsmen sit cross-legged before their wares. Pottery painted with figures of heroes and gods. Bronze tools hammered to precision. Leather goods worked with intricate designs. The music of commerce, haggling, greetings, laughter, creates a symphony around you. You pause at a bread seller's stall where loaves of various shapes release steam into the morning air. The baker, his arms dusted with flour to his elbows, greets you by name. The barley loaves are fresh from the oven, he says, gesturing to the round, crusty breads. You exchange a few coins, small pieces of silver bearing the owl of Athens, for a warm loaf, which he wraps in a scrap of linen cloth. The transaction completes, you tuck the bread into the leather pouch at your waist, a gift to bring home to your family later. Moving deeper into the agora, you approach a wine seller's shop. Huge earthenware amphorae line the walls, sealed with wooden stoppers and marked with the vintages and origins. From Chios, the merchant tells you, seeing your interest in one particular vessel. Sweet as honey, with the scent of summer flowers. You sample a small amount in a clay cup, letting the flavor spread across your tongue. It's indeed exceptional. but the price he quotes makes you wince slightly. After some pleasant haggling, an expected dance between buyer and seller, you agree on a price for a smaller vessel of the precious liquid to be delivered to your home by the merchant's slave later today. The sun climbs higher in the sky as you continue your errands. Your sandals now carry the dust of the agora, and you feel a light sheen of sweat forming on your brow. Near the center of the open space, you notice a gathering crowd. Curiosity draws you closer. A philosopher, you recognize him as a follower of Socrates, has attracted an audience. His voice carries across the open space as he poses questions about justice and virtue. Several young men respond eagerly, attempting to impress with their reasoning. You pause to listen, intrigued by the intellectual exchange. Is it not true, the philosopher asks, his beard moving with each carefully articulated word, that we cannot speak of a just city without first understanding what makes a just person? The question hangs in the air, and you consider it yourself. This is the essence of Athens, not just a place of commerce, but a crucible of ideas. Even as a modest citizen of moderate means, you value the exchange of thought, the examination of what makes a good life. While the debate continues, you notice a herald mounting the steps of the Stoa. He raises a staff wrapped with olive branches and calls for attention. The crowd quiets as he unrolls a parchment and announces that the assembly will meet tomorrow on the Nix to discuss relations with Sparta. As a citizen, your presence is expected. The familiar mix of pride and duty fills your chest. This is what separates Athens from other cities. This is your privilege and responsibility. You will have a voice in decisions that affect the polis, the community. When the announcement is complete, you continue through the agora. Near the southwest corner stands the tholos, the round building where the current Prytaneus, the committee of 50 citizens who manage daily affairs, take their meals and even sleep during their term of service. One day, your name might be drawn by lot to serve there. The thought both intimidates and excites you. Such is the Athenian way. Leadership by ordinary citizens taking their turn. Your stomach reminds you that midday approaches. Following your nose, you make your way to a small cook shop nestled between two larger buildings. The scent of grilled fish and garlic fills the air. Inside, several wooden benches line the walls, and a few fellow citizens already sit enjoying their meals. The cook, a burly man with arms scarred from years before his fire, greets you with familiarity. The usual, he asks, and you nod, settling onto a bench. Soon, a wooden trencher appears before you bearing a portion of grilled sea bass, its skin crisped and flesh white and flaky. Alongside it sits a mound of barley mixed with olive oil and herbs, and a few olives glistening with brine. You pay with a small coin and set to eating, using pieces of flatbread to scoop up the food, as is customary. No need for utensils when the gods gave you hands. As you eat, you listen to the conversations around you. Two merchants discuss the latest shipment from Egypt, papyrus and exotic spices. An elderly man complains about the quality of this year's olive harvest. Two younger citizens debate passionately about Pericles' latest building projects. Is it right to spend so much of the treasury on marble and gold when the threat of Sparta looms? This is how news travels in Athens, from mouth to ear, in cookshops and bathhouses, under the colonnades of the agora. Your meal complete, you step back into the sunlight, now high overhead. The agora has grown even more crowded as the day progresses. You make your way toward the south side, where artisans have their workshops. Today, you have a specific destination in mind, the sandal maker's shop. Your current pair has served you well, but the leather is worn thin beneath your heel. The workshop is open to the street, allowing passers-by to observe the craftsman at work. The sandal maker, an older man with fingers permanently stained from the tanning process, nods as you approach. You remove your sandals and sit on a wooden stool while he examines your feet with the clinical detachment of his profession. His calloused hands measure your feet with pieces of string, noting the width and length on a scrap of leather. 3 days, he tells you, quoting a reasonable price. I have good leather from Corinth. Will last you through 2 seasons if the gods favor it. You agree, leaving a small deposit. The transaction takes less time than the conversation that follows. News of his family, your family, mutual acquaintances, and naturally politics. Such social connections are the fabric that binds Athens together, as essential as the leather thongs of your sandals. With your business in the agora complete, you decide to take a different route home, one that passes by the gymnasium. Inside, its walls, young men exercise in the nude, their bodies glistening with olive oil as they wrestle, throw the javelin, or practice running. Older men watch from the shade, discussing politics and philosophy. The gymnasium is not merely a place for physical training, but for developing the mind as well, the Athenian ideal of balance between body and intellect. You don't enter today, but pause at the outer columns, watching a wrestling match between 2 youths. Their bodies strain against each other, muscles defined by sunlight and shadow, feet shifting in the sandy floor of the palaestra. The wrestling master shouts instructions, guiding them in proper form. This training shapes not just athletes but warriors. Every Athenian man must be ready to defend the city when called to service as a hoplite. You yourself have stood in the phalanx during your younger years, shield locked with your neighbors, spear outstretched. The memory brings both pride and a shadow of remembered fear. Moving on, you pass by one of the city's public fountains, where women gather with clay water jugs balanced on their shoulders. The fountain house, decorated with painted scenes of nymphs, provides cool water channeled from springs outside the city. Women chat as they wait their turns, sharing news and gossip. You nod respectfully, but don't linger. The fountain house is primarily women's domain during daylight hours. Your own household's water needs are met by your slaves' daily visits here. The afternoon begins to wane as you climb the slope back toward your neighborhood. The city feels different now than in the morning. Quieter in some ways as many citizens take respite from the heat, yet filled with different activities. Children have finished their schooling for the day and play in small groups. Artisans continue their work in shaded workshops. The aroma of evening meals being prepared begins to scent the air. Olive oil heating in clay pots, herbs being crushed with mortar and pestle. Before returning home, you decide to visit the barber's shop near your neighborhood. Inside, several men already recline on wooden benches, engaged in animated discussion about the rumors of Spartan movements near the border. The barber, a notorious gossip and repository of all neighborhood news, welcomes you effusively. "Did you hear?" he asks, as you settle onto his bench, draping a linen cloth around your shoulders, "that Aristocles, you know him, the potter's son, they call him Plato now, has become completely entranced by Socrates. His father is beside himself. The boy was meant for politics with his family connections, and now he follows that barefoot questioner around like a puppy." His scissors snip rhythmically as he trims your beard to the fashionable length, not too long, but full enough to mark you as a mature citizen. You let the barber's chatter wash over you, occasionally contributing a comment or question. This too is part of citizenship, staying informed of the small dramas and larger concerns of your community. By the time he applies scented olive oil to your beard and smooths it with a small wooden comb, you've heard 3 political opinions, 2 scandalous rumors, and 1 dire prediction about the grain harvest. The sun hangs low in the western sky as you finally turn your steps homeward. The quality of light has changed, bathing the limestone buildings in golden amber hues. Long shadows stretch across the streets. The day's heat diminishes, replaced by a gentler warmth. You pass the neighborhood shrine where several people have gathered to pour libations for the evening blessing. The murmured prayers blend with birdsong as swallows swoop between buildings, catching insects in the fading light. At your doorway, you pause to make a small offering at your household herb, a square pillar topped with the head of Hermes and Phallus, protector of doorways, a splash of wine from a small flask in honor of the god who guards transitions and thresholds. The ritual is brief but meaningful, marking the passage from public to private space, from citizen to family man. Inside, your home feels cool and welcoming after the day in the sun. The central courtyard is decorated with simple clay pots of herbs and flowers. Your wife greets you, her peplos, a long draped garment fastened at the shoulders, marked with traces of the woolworking that has occupied her day. Your daughter sits nearby, tiny fingers learning to spin thread, her face a study in concentration. Your son has returned from his lessons and practices writing letters in wax with a stylus under the watchful eye of your slave. You produce the bread from your pouch, now cooled but still fresh, and your family receives it with appreciation. While your wife and the slave prepare the evening meal, you sit with your son, listening as he recites lines from Homer that he memorized today. His voice rises and falls with the rhythm of the poetry, telling of Achilles' rage and Hector's courage. You correct him gently when he stumbles over a phrase, pride filling your chest at his progress. This education, literature, music, physical training, will prepare him for citizenship when he reaches his 18th year. The teacher says, "We'll attend the theatre festival this month," your son tells you excitedly. "Sophocles has a new tragedy, and there will be comedies too." You nod, making a mental note to arrange attendance for yourself as well. The dramatic festivals are not mere entertainment, but religious and civic events, where the entire city gathers to witness stories of gods and heroes, to laugh at political satire, to be part of a shared experience that defines what it means to be Athenian. As twilight deepens, oil lamps are lit around the courtyard, creating pools of warm light against the gathering darkness. The evening meal is served, a simple but satisfying fare of barley bread, olive oil, a stew of lentils with a small portion of salted fish, fresh figs, and watered wine. Your family reclines on cushions around a low table, enjoying both the food and each other's company. You pour a small libation before eating, acknowledging the gods' gifts of sustenance. Conversation flows easily, your day in the agora, your wife's management of the household stores, your children's small triumphs and concerns. This is the heart of Athenian life, not just the public forums and dramatic festivals, but these quiet moments of family communion. The city beyond your walls may be the cradle of democracy and philosophy, but here in this courtyard is where those lofty ideals find their most immediate meaning. After the meal, with night fully descended and the first stars visible in the patch of sky above your courtyard, you sit alone for a time, enjoying a final cup of wine. The day's sensations linger in your memory. The sun on stone, the press of bodies in the agora, the taste of fresh bread, the sound of philosophical debate. Tomorrow will bring the assembly meeting, where you'll join fellow citizens to deliberate on matters of state. But for now, there is just the cool night air, the distant sounds of the city settling into sleep, and the satisfaction of another day lived fully as an Athenian citizen. As you prepare for sleep, removing your chiton and washing your face and hands in a basin of cool water, you offer a final prayer to Athena, guardian of your city. Your pallet awaits, a simple mattress stuffed with wool, covered with linen sheets. Tomorrow will bring new concerns, new pleasures, new duties. But as sleep begins to claim you, your final thoughts are of gratitude. To be born Greek, to be a citizen of Athens in this golden age, to walk daily beneath the shadow of the Parthenon, to have a voice in the assembly, to live in this moment when everything seems possible. The soft darkness envelops you, and you drift into dreams of olive groves and marble columns, of ships in harbor and philosophers in conversation, of a city that, for all its flaws, strives towards something never before attempted in the history of humankind, a place where ordinary men govern themselves. The lantern flames flicker against attic darkness, casting long shadows across marble thresholds. As night deepens over the sleeping city, we travel beyond the urban boundaries, where sacred groves have stood since time immemorial. You wake, before dawn, not to the city sounds of Athens proper, but to a profound silence broken only by the gentle rustling of silver-green leaves in the morning breeze. Your sleeping pallet rests upon the smooth wooden floor of a modest caretaker's dwelling, adjacent to Athena's sacred olive grove, just beyond the bustle of the city walls. For 3 months each year, you serve as guardian of this holy place, an honor bestowed upon your family for generations, ever since your ancestor helped protect these sacred trees during the Persian invasion. The air within your small stone hut feels crisp against your skin as you push aside the woolen blanket and rise. Through the single window, the eastern sky shows the first blush of dawn, not yet the rose-fingered morning of Homer's verses, but a subtle lightening of the darkness, a promise of the day to come. You light a small oil lamp, its gentle flame illuminating the sparse interior. Your pallet, a wooden chest containing your few possessions, a simple shrine to Athena in the corner with her small wooden icon beneath a spray of dried herbs. You pour a few drops of precious oil into a shallow dish before the goddess's image, murmuring an ancient prayer taught to you by your father, who learned it from his father before him. The words connect you across time to countless ancestors who performed this same ritual. Glaucopis Athena, you whisper, addressing the bright-eyed goddess and guardian of our city. Your servant greets the day in your sacred space. The familiar ritual centers you, preparing your mind and spirit for the responsibilities ahead. Your morning ablutions are simple but reverent. You wash your face and hands with water collected from the sacred spring that feeds the grove, its mineral coolness instantly refreshing. The water, drawn yesterday at sunset and stored overnight in a clay amphora, feels almost alive against your skin, a gift from the earth itself, emerging from secret depths to nourish the goddess's trees. You dress in a clean but plain linen chiton, appropriate for your duties. Unlike in the city, where you might wear more decorated garments, here simplicity honors the divine. Stepping outside your dwelling, you breathe deeply of the morning air, rich with the distinctive scent of olive trees, part sweetness, part earth, wholly unique. The grove spreads before you in the strengthening light, over 100 trees standing in ordered rows across the gentle slope. Their gnarled trunks, some thicker than 3 men could encircle with joined arms, speak of centuries of growth. The oldest among them is said to be the original tree gifted by Athena herself during her contest with Poseidon for patronage of the city. Whether divine or merely ancient, it commands the center of the grove, its twisted trunk bearing witness to countless generations of Athenian history. Morning ritual demands that you walk the perimeter of the grove before anything else, ensuring its boundaries remain unviolated during the night. Your sandaled feet follow the well-worn path, accompanied by the gradual awakening of birds, whose songs pierce the dawn, quiet with increasing frequency. The eastern slope catches the first direct rays of sunlight, illuminating the silver undersides of leaves that shimmer with each breath of wind. You pause, watching this daily transformation, from the monochrome shapes of night to the vibrant colors of day, as though the goddess herself breathes life into her domain with the rising sun. The boundary stones marking the sacred precinct remain undisturbed, each one decorated with an owl carving, symbol of the goddess. You check them carefully, knowing that to move such a marker would incur not just earthly punishment, but divine wrath. Yet it is not fear that guides your attention to detail, but reverence. This land belongs not to any mortal, but to Athena herself. You are merely its temporary guardian, ensuring its sanctity for those who will come after you, just as those before preserved it for your time. Circuit complete, you collect the tools needed for the morning's work from the small shed adjacent to your dwelling. A bronze pruning knife, its edge honed to perfect sharpness. A wooden rake for gathering fallen leaves. Leather gloves stained dark from years of handling olives and oil. The implements themselves feel consecrated through years of use in divine service, each one balanced and familiar in your hands. Your first task awaits at the sacred spring, where stone channels guide the water through the grove. Each morning, you clear any debris, fallen leaves, twigs, occasional small creatures who sought water in the night, ensuring the lifeblood flows unimpeded to the trees. The water catches the strengthening morning light, throwing dazzling reflections against the stone conduits as your hands work methodically, reverently. You speak softly to the water as you work, thanking it for its nourishment, a habit your father encouraged. To give thanks for that which sustains, he taught you, is to recognize our place in the order of things. With irrigation channels cleared, you move among the trees themselves, each one known to you as intimately as a family member. This one leans slightly eastward, that one bears a lightning scar from 3 summers past. Another produces olives with a distinctive sweetness unlike its neighbors. You inspect each for signs of disease or distress, your experienced eyes noting the slightest changes in bark texture or leaf color. When you find a damaged branch on a younger tree near the eastern boundary, you remove it with your knife, making a clean cut that will heal properly. The pruning is not merely practical but almost ceremonial, removing what no longer serves so that new growth may flourish. The sun climbs higher as you work, warming your back through the thin fabric of your chiton. Birdsong has given way to the buzzing of bees among the small white flowers that bloom alongside the grove's edge. Industrious creatures collecting nectar for honey that will eventually be offered to the gods. Overhead, a hawk circles lazily on thermal currents, its sharp eyes scanning the ground for movement. All is as it should be, the natural order functioning in harmony around the sacred space. Near midday, you hear the approach of voices, visitors to the grove. Setting aside your tools, you wash your hands at the spring, preparing to serve in your other capacity as guide and attendant to those who come to honor Athena in her sacred precinct. A small group appears around the pathway bend, a family dressed in their finest garments, clearly from the city, the father carrying a small clay vessel that likely contains an offering of oil. You greet them with appropriate formality, bowing slightly. Welcome to the sacred grove of the goddess Athena Polius, you say, using her formal title as city protector. May her wisdom guide your steps among her gifts. The traditional welcome seems to relax the family. The mother's tense expression softens, the children's fidgeting stills. The father explains they have come to make an offering before his son's dokimasia, the examination that will confirm his citizenship now that he has reached 18 years of age. You lead them along the central path toward the most ancient tree, the original olive, according to tradition. The massive trunk, hollow in parts with age, yet still bearing fruit each year, rises from the earth like a living sculpture. Its branches spread widely, creating a canopy of dappled shade where the family now stands in respectful silence. You instruct them in the proper ritual, how to approach, where to pour the offering, which prayers are most appropriate for their purpose. The father produces the vessel of olive oil, not ordinary cooking oil, but the precious clear first pressing, golden in the sunlight filtering through the leaves above. He hands it carefully to his son, a gangly youth whose recent growth has left him awkward in his movements. You guide the boy's hands as he pours a thin stream of oil onto the earth at the tree's roots, explaining that what nourishes the tree honors the goddess. Great Athena, the boy recites, his voice cracking slightly with nervousness, who sprang fully formed from the brow of Zeus, bearer of wisdom and strategy, accepting this offering from your loyal servant. Guide me as I take my place among the citizens of your beloved city. His words, though practiced, carry genuine emotion, the weight of this transition from boy to citizen palpable in his careful pronunciation. When the ritual concludes, the family's relief is visible, shoulders lowering and faces brightening as though a burden has been set aside. This is the power of proper observance. Not merely tradition, but connection to something larger than oneself. A thread woven into the vast fabric of Athenian identity. You answer their questions about the grove's history, relating the story, known to every Athenian child, how during the Persian invasion, the sacred olive was burned to the ground, yet the very next day a new shoot was found, sprouting from the charred stump, a divine sign that Athens would rise again from destruction. As the family departs, you return to your duties, gathering fallen branches for the sacred fire that must be maintained at the small altar near the center of the grove. The wood from these trees is never used for ordinary purposes. What falls naturally may fuel the ritual flame, but to cut a living branch for firewood would be sacrilege. You arrange the gathered branches in a neat stack beside the stone altar, selecting a few properly seasoned pieces for the midday offering. The altar itself is ancient and simple, a rectangular stone platform with channels carved to collect liquid offerings, worn smooth by countless ceremonies. You sweep it clean of leaves and dust, then prepare the kindling. From your dwelling, you bring a coal kept burning in a bronze container, using it to light the sacred fire. As flames catch and rise, you sprinkle dried herbs, thyme, rosemary, and bay leaves from the grove's edge onto the fire. Their aromatic smoke curls upward through the olive branches toward the clear blue sky, carrying your midday prayers to the goddess. Athena Ergain, you intone, using the title that honors her as patron of craftspeople. Accept this humble offering from your servant. May your wisdom guide our city's leaders. May your strength protect our walls. May your olive trees continue to bless us with their bounty. The familiar prayer feels different each time you speak it. Today, with tensions between Athens and Sparta growing, the request for protection carries particular urgency. With the sacred duties of midday complete, you retire to the shade of a broad olive tree to take your simple meal. Barley bread, a handful of olives from last year's harvest of this very grove, a small piece of goat cheese, and water from the spring. You eat slowly, mindfully, tasting the connection between the sacred trees and their fruit, between your service and the continuity of tradition. Crumbs you scatter deliberately for the birds. Nothing in this place should be wasted. The heat of early afternoon brings drowsiness, and you permit yourself a brief rest, leaning against the tree trunk. The dappled shade plays patterns across your closed eyelids, and the gentle rustling of leaves creates a lullaby of sorts. Yet your rest is not deep. One ear remains attuned to the sounds of the grove, ready to wake should anything require attention. This half-sleep is itself a kind of meditation, allowing your mind to settle into the rhythm of the sacred space. Your peaceful repose is interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps, heavier than the family from earlier, deliberate rather, than reverent. Opening your eyes, you see a man in the distinctive dark robes of the Archon Basileus, one of Athens' chief officials responsible for religious matters. He is accompanied by 2 attendants carrying writing implements, wax tablets, and styluses. You rise quickly, brushing crumbs from your chiton, and bow deeply in appropriate respect for his office. The council sends greetings, the Archon states formally. We come to conduct the annual accounting of the sacred olives. This inspection occurs each year, an inventory of every tree in the grove, ensuring none have been removed or damaged, cataloguing the expected yield for the coming harvest. The oil from these trees is not for common use, but reserved for the great Panathenaic festival, and as prizes for athletic victors. For the next several hours, you accompany the officials through systematic rows, identifying each tree by its position and characteristics. The Archon scribes make careful notation of your assessment of each tree's health and expected productivity. When you reach the ancient central tree, the Archon himself places his palm against its gnarled trunk in a gesture of reverence before proceeding with the formal documentation. How does the Morii fare this season? He asks, using the special term for these sacred olives. You explain that despite the unusually dry spring, the trees show remarkable resilience. Further evidence, you suggest respectfully, of their divine protection. The Archon nods thoughtfully, instructing his scribe to note your observation. Though he wears the authority of his office like a visible mantle, you sense his genuine concern for the grove's well-being. A reminder that even Athens' highest officials serve something greater than themselves. The inspection concludes as the afternoon light begins to soften. The Archon formally stamps the completed inventory with his seal, presenting you with a copy for the grove's records. The council acknowledges your faithful service, he says, the formal phrase accompanied by an approving nod. Such recognition, though brief, fills you with quiet pride. Your role may be humble in the grand machinery of Athenian governance, but it is necessary, respected. After the officials depart, you return to the physical work of caretaking, clearing fallen branches, checking the integrity of the low stone wall that marks the grove's boundary. The physical labor feels satisfying after the mental attention required during the inspection. Your hands, calloused from years of such work, move with practiced efficiency. There is wisdom in this alternation between mental and physical effort, between sacred ritual and practical maintenance. A balance reflecting Athena herself, goddess of both wisdom and practical craft. As the afternoon wanes toward evening, you notice a solitary figure approaching along the path from the city, an old man walking slowly with the aid of a gnarled olive wood staff. You recognize him immediately despite his infrequent visits. Sostrates, one of Athens' respected philosophers, known for his teachings on the relationship between human law and divine order. He comes to the grove not for formal offerings, but for contemplation, seeking inspiration among these living connections to the divine. "Greetings, Keeper," he calls as he approaches, his voice surprisingly strong despite his advanced years. "Has the goddess shared any new wisdom with you today?" The question is partly jest, partly genuine inquiry, an acknowledgement of your unique position as daily witness to this sacred space. "Only the same lessons she always teaches," you reply with appropriate humility. "Patience, resilience, the value of deep roots and steady growth." Substrates nods approvingly at your answer, his eyes crinkling with appreciation. May I sit a while beneath her branches? He asks, though permission is hardly necessary for one of his stature. You guide him to a smooth stone bench placed specifically for contemplation, positioned to catch the late afternoon light filtering through the silvery leaves. As he settles himself with a grateful sigh, you offer him water from the spring in a simple clay cup. He accepts with a nod of thanks. I come seeking clarity, the old philosopher admits after a long silence. The assembly debates sending more ships to Sicily, an expedition that could secure Athens' dominance or drain our strength when we can least afford it. I must speak tomorrow, and I find my thoughts clearer in this place than amid the shouting of the Knicks. You listen respectfully, honored by his confidence, yet careful not to overstep your position by offering political opinions. Instead, you share what you know best. The oldest trees here survived the Persian burning because their roots went deeper than the fire could reach. When all seemed destroyed, they emerged again. Sostrates contemplates your words, fingers stroking, his white beard thoughtfully. Indeed, he finally murmurs. Perhaps there is wisdom there worth considering. He falls silent then, his eyes tracking the patterns of light and shadow cast by the gently moving branches overhead. You withdraw discreetly, allowing him the solitude his contemplation requires, though remaining within call should he need anything. As you tend to the evening's tasks, preparing the night lamps that mark the sacred boundary, sweeping the paths, clear of the day's fallen leaves, you occasionally glance toward the philosopher. His stillness is complete, body present, but mind clearly traveling paths of thought invisible to others. This too is part of what makes Athens unique among cities. This space for contemplation, for wrestling with ideas rather than merely reacting to events. The sun begins its descent toward the western hills, bathing the grove in golden light that transforms the silver-green leaves to burnished bronze. This time of day holds particular beauty, when the angle of light penetrates directly through the olive branches, illuminating the grove from within. The ancient Athenians who first dedicated this space to Athena surely recognized this daily, In's miracle, this moment when the mundane appears momentarily divine. The philosopher eventually rises from his meditation, seeming both lighter and more solemn. I thank you for the hospitality of silence, he says, an unusual phrase that nevertheless perfectly captures what you provided. The goddess has indeed spoken, though not in words. You accompany him to the grove's entrance, where he pauses to look back at the trees silhouetted against the evening sky. We forget, amid our marble temples and political debates, that divinity reveals itself most clearly in living things. Guard this wisdom along with these trees, keeper. After Sostrates departs, you prepare for the evening ritual, the final sacred duty of your day. From a special amphora kept within your dwelling, you retrieve oil pressed from last year's harvest of the sacred trees. This oil, clearer and more precious than any sold in the marketplace, is reserved exclusively for ritual purposes. With reverent care, you fill the ceremonial lamps positioned around the ancient central tree. As twilight deepens into dusk, you light each lamp in turn, reciting the names of the goddess: Pallas, Tritogeneia, Promachos, Parthenos, Polius, each title illuminating a different aspect of her divine nature. The small flames create a circle, of golden light in the gathering darkness, a visible boundary between sacred and ordinary space. Within this illuminated circle, you pour a final libation of unmixed wine onto the earth at the tree's roots, rich and dark as the soil itself. Night comes to your sacred grove, bright-eyed one, you murmur, completing the day's cycle of devotion. Guard what is yours until dawn returns. The traditional evening prayer acknowledges the transition of guardianship. During daylight, you serve as the grove's protector. During darkness, that role returns to the goddess herself. With ritual complete, you stand a moment longer in the circle of lamplight, listening to the evening sounds that replace daylight's activities. The first calls of nocturnal birds, the distant bleating of goats being herded back to their folds, the subtle shift in the breeze that always accompanies sunset. Beyond the grove's boundary, Athens prepares for night. Lamps being lit in homes, the day's business concluding, citizens returning from fields and assembly to family hearths. You gather your tools and return them to their proper places, each action deliberate, ordered. The rhythm of these daily tasks becomes itself a form of prayer. Attention given to simple acts elevates them beyond mere chores. Your father once told you that the gods notice not just grand gestures and expensive offerings, but the care with which ordinary duties are performed. In this light, even sweeping the path becomes sacred work. Inside your dwelling, you kindle your own small lamp and prepare a modest evening meal similar to your lunch. Simple fare, befitting your role as caretaker. As you eat, you unroll a papyrus scroll borrowed from a friend in the city, one of Aesop's fables illustrated with delicate line drawings. Though your duties keep you somewhat isolated from city life, you maintain your connection to Athens' intellectual current through such readings, often discussing them with visitors like Sostrates, who appreciate finding a literate mind in the grove's keeper. Reading by lamplight, you lose yourself in the ancient stories until your eyes grow heavy. Outside, night has fully claimed the grove, transforming it into a different realm. Shadows deepen between the trees. Owls call to one another. Occasionally, a fox barks in the distance. These night sounds are as familiar to you as the daylight chorus, part of the grove's complete cycle that you've internalized through seasons of service. Before sleeping, you step outside once more to verify the ritual lamps still burn around, the ancient olive. The night air carries a different scent than daylight, cooler, damper, rich with the exhalations of earth and vegetation. Above, stars puncture the dark sky in familiar patterns, their light seemingly caught and reflected in the silver-backed olive leaves that stir in the gentle night breeze. You stand a moment in contemplation, feeling simultaneously small beneath the vast sky and connected to something enduring. The history contained in this grove stretches back beyond written memory. These trees have witnessed the birth of democracy, the construction and destruction of temples, the rise of Athens from small settlement to empire's heart. They will likely remain long after you return to the earth, their gnarled branches still reaching skyward, their roots still drawing life from soil enriched by countless offerings. This continuity provides comfort. You are part of something that transcends your individual existence. Returning to your pallet, you extinguish your lamp with a practiced breath. Darkness embraces you, yet it is not threatening. Rather, it feels protective, a necessary balance to daylight's exposure. As sleep approaches, your mind drifts between conscious thought and dreams, finding little distinction between them in this liminal space. The goddess Athena herself is said to send wisdom through dreams, and on many mornings you've woken with unexpected clarity about a problem or decision. Tonight, as consciousness fades, you imagine the roots of the ancient olives extending beneath you, a network of living connections spreading throughout the sacred ground. Your breathing slows to match the gentle rhythm of the trees themselves. Inhalation, exhalation, a constant exchange with the world around you. Sleep comes not as an abrupt severing of awareness, but as a gradual merging with the grove's nocturnal existence. Your last thought before surrendering to dreams is one of gratitude for the privilege of serving in this space where divine and human realms intersect, for the wisdom gained through observing the measured pace of trees whose lives span centuries, for the opportunity to be part of Athens' sacred landscape. In a city renowned for its philosophers and politicians, you have found meaning in this quieter service, guardian of living history, caretaker of divine gifts, keeper of sacred continuity. And so, night passes in the olive grove, with both keeper and trees embraced in Athena's protection, connected to Athens' past and future through roots that reach deeper than any mortal understanding. The silver leaves continue their gentle dance in the darkness, whispering ancient secrets to those patient enough to listen. Tomorrow will bring new visitors, new offerings, new revelations, but the essential rhythm remains unchanged, a heartbeat of devotion that has sustained this sacred place since time beyond memory. As night embraces the sacred grove, we travel back within the city walls, where beneath a star-filled sky, the vast stone bowl of the theatre awaits dawn's arrival and the gathering of citizens for stories greater than themselves. You wake to the sound of excited voices filling the narrow street outside your home. Soft morning light filters through the small window, and the familiar scent of bread baking in nearby ovens mingles with the anticipatory energy that pervades Athens today. It is the first day of the city Dionysia, the great spring festival honoring the god Dionysus, when for 5 days the entire polis will gather to witness new tragedies and comedies performed in the theatre of Dionysus beneath the Acropolis's southern slope. Sitting up on your sleeping pallet, you feel the flutter of excitement in your chest, a mixture of religious reverence and artistic appreciation. Your father was a choragos once, sponsoring a chorus for Aeschylus's trilogy many years ago, and though you lack the wealth for such patronage, you have inherited his deep appreciation for dramatic arts. In Athens, theatre is not mere entertainment, but civic ritual, religious observance, and philosophical inquiry woven into a single, transcendent experience. Rising, you wash your face and hands in the basin of cool water your wife has already prepared. The water against your skin brings full wakefulness, each droplet a tiny shock that clears the remnants of sleep from your mind. You dress with particular care today, selecting a clean chiton of good quality, dyed the pale saffron color that has become fashionable among the middle class. Around your shoulders, you drape a himation of undyed wool, its natural cream color complementing the chiton beneath. Though not the purple-bordered garments of the wealthy, your festival attire marks you as a respectable citizen of moderate means. Your wife hands you a small package wrapped in linen, a modest meal of bread, cheese, and dried figs to sustain you through the long day of performances. Her fingers, roughened from woolworking and household management, brush against yours in the exchange, a moment of connection before you join the larger community gathering. Bring back the stories, she says, as she does each festival. Though women attend the performances, your household's limited resources mean only you will go today, becoming the vessel through which the dramatic experience will reach her and your children. Stepping into the street, you join the stream of citizens flowing toward the southern slope of the Acropolis. The procession has a dual nature, festive yet solemn, celebratory yet reverent. Many carry small offerings for the god, garlands of spring flowers, terracotta figurines, modest libations of wine in painted cups. Children dart between adults, their excitement less restrained, playing impromptu games of tag before being called back to order by watchful parents. The morning air carries the complex scent of early spring in Athens, blossoming fruit trees in courtyards, aromatic herbs in window boxes, the ever-present undertone of olive wood burning in household hearths. Overhead, the sky stretches clear and blue, promising a day of perfect weather for the outdoor performances. You silently thank Dionysus for his favor. Rain during the festival is considered an ill omen, the god's disapproval made manifest as you walk. Your sandals join hundreds of others in a rhythmic percussion against the stone-paved street. The sound grows as you near the theatre, a physical manifestation of the city coming together. 15,000 citizens converging on a single space for a shared experience unavailable anywhere else in the Greek world. This is Athens at its most Athenian, democratic, artistic, religious, communal. The path begins to climb as you approach the theatre. Your breathing deepens with the exertion, and you feel the pleasant strain in your calf muscles. Around you, conversations buzz with speculation about the day's performances. 3 tragedians will present their works. The venerable Sophocles, whose masterful plays have won him repeated victories. The controversial Euripides, whose innovative approach to myth often challenges tradition. And Philocles, nephew of Aeschylus, carrying the weighty legacy of his famous uncle. They say Sophocles has written about Ajax this year, comments a fellow citizen walking beside you, a pottery merchant you know from the Agora. His face glows with anticipation beneath his neatly trimmed beard. His treatment of herpes is always complex, never merely glorifying nor condemning, but showing the fullness of their humanity. You nod in agreement, adding, and Euripides, who knows what provocations he will offer. Last year's Medea still disturbs my sleep sometimes. To imagine a mother driven to such an extreme, your voice trails off, remembering the stunned silence that followed that performance, how the city seemed to exhale collectively after witnessing such raw, emotional truth staged before them. Rounding the final bend in the path, you catch your first glimpse of the theatre itself, a vast semicircle carved into the hillside, row upon row of stone seats rising from the circular orchestra where the chorus will dance. Even partially filled, the space impresses with its perfect acoustics and sightlines, a triumph of engineering in service to art. At the far end stands the scheme, the wooden building that serves as backdrop and changing area for the actors, already decorated with painted panels suggesting a palace facade. It awaits only the performers to come alive with mythic possibility. Before entering, you pause at a small shrine where a priest of Dionysus accepts offerings from arriving citizens. You place a modest libation of wine, pouring it into the stone basin while murmuring a traditional prayer. Dionysus, breaker of boundaries, looser of cares, accept this offering and open my understanding to the truths your festival reveals. The dark wine disappears into the porous stone, accepted by the earth beneath. A tangible connection between mortal offering and divine reception. The theatre entry bustles with officials checking citizenship, as non-Athenians must pay for attendance, while citizens enter freely, one of democracy's cultural benefits. You state your name and dem, your local district, to the official, who checks against his list and nods you through. This small interaction reinforces your identity as an Athenian citizen, one who belongs in this space by birthright and participation in civic life. Finding your section proves somewhat challenging, as the lower seats are reserved for priests, officials, and honored citizens. Your status places you midway up the slope, neither among the elite front rows, nor relegated to the distant upper tiers, where metics, resident foreigners, and the poorest citizens sit. The stone seat, worn smooth by generations of festival goers, feels cool against your body as you settle in, arranging your hymation more comfortably around your shoulders. All around you, the theatre fills with humanity. Every age, every neighborhood, every occupation within the citizen body represented in this temporary community. Behind you sits an elderly shipwright from Piraeus, his skin leathered by decades of sun and salt. Before you, a young scribe whose ink-stained fingers mark his profession. Beside you, a farmer from the dam of Achane, his robust frame testimony to a life of physical labor. Normally separated by geography and occupation, today you are unified as an audience, as Athenians, as participants in religious ritual. The buzz of conversation creates a texture of sound, unlike anything else in Athenian experience. Thousands of voices contained within the perfect acoustic bowl of the theatre, creating not cacophony, but a harmonious murmur that rises and falls like waves against the shore. You catch fragments of debate, friendly wagers on which playwright will receive this year's prize, retellings of memorable performances from festivals past. The morning sun climbs higher, warming the stone beneath you and illuminating the orchestra. Below, the theatre faces east, a deliberate orientation allowing performances to begin in morning light and conclude as afternoon shadows gradually extend across the space. A natural transition that playwrights incorporate into their dramatic arcs. You unwrap a small portion of your bread and cheese, eating slowly to make the provisions last through the day's performances. A hush falls over the assembly as priests and officials process into the orchestra, their ceremonial robes gleaming, white against the earthen floor. The archon eponymous, the official who gives his name to the year and oversees the festival, leads the procession, followed by 10 judges selected by lot to evaluate the plays. Behind them, walk representatives from Athens' allied cities, bearing tribute to be displayed during the festival. A political statement embedded within religious ceremony, reminding all present of Athenian power and influence. The high priest of Dionysus steps forward, raising his arms for silence. His voice, trained to project without shouting, carries effortlessly to the highest tier. Citizens of Athens, the god Dionysus, giver of wine, breaker of boundaries, patron of masks and transformations, welcomes you to his festival. A cheer rises from 15,000 throats, the collective voice of the polis acknowledging divine patronage of this most Athenian art form. Following ancient tradition, the priest conducts a purification ceremony, splashing wine and water around the orchestra's perimeter while attendants release doves from wicker cages. The birds circle overhead before disappearing beyond the Acropolis, a favorable sign, greeted by murmurs of approval from the crowd. An unblemished bull is led into the orchestra, garlanded with flowers, its dark hide gleaming in the sunlight. The sacrificial knife flashes briefly, followed by the ceremonial collection of blood and proper distribution of meat. Portions for the gods, for the priests, for selected citizens. The scent of roasting flesh rises from the altar, the smoke, carrying prayers heavenward. With religious obligations fulfilled, the artistic competition can begin. The Archon announces the first playwright, Sophocles, whose name elicits enthusiastic applause. You lean forward slightly in anticipation. Though you've witnessed dozens of tragedies in your lifetime, each festival brings fresh wonder, new insights into the human condition refracted through ancient myths. A moment of hushed expectation follows, broken by the entrance of the chorus. 15 men in identical masks representing Salaminian sailors, moving in perfect unison as they take their positions in the orchestra. Their synchronized movement, practiced for months under the playwright's direction, immediately establishes the formal beauty that characterizes Sophoclean tragedy. Behind your seat, the elderly shipwright whispers to his companion, "Look how." They sway slightly. You can almost feel the deck of a trireme beneath their feet. From the side entrance appears the protagonist, masked as Ajax, the massive mask with its exaggerated features somehow capturing both heroic stature and profound distress. Though you know it is merely an actor beneath the mask, the transformation seems complete. This is no longer Timanthes, the renowned performer from last year's festival, but Ajax himself, the great warrior driven to madness by divine intervention and wounded pride. The actor's voice fills the theatre, modulated with perfect control, to convey both power and vulnerability. Where is honor when the arms of Achilles go not to the most worthy, but to the most cunning of tongue? The question hangs in the air, resonating with contemporary Athenian concerns about merit versus persuasion in democratic governance. Already, Sophocles weaves together mythic past and civic present, using ancient story to examine current ethics. You feel the familiar sensation of being simultaneously transported and more fully present, drawn into the mythic world while remaining intensely aware of your place within the collective audience. When Ajax rages against perceived injustice, you notice how citizens around you respond differently, some nodding in sympathy, others shifting uncomfortably, all engaged in silent dialogue with the dramatic action. This is theatre's peculiar magic in Athens. It creates both communal experience and private reflection. The chorus moves in circular patterns, their ode lamenting the fragility of human greatness. The melody, accompanied by flute and lyre, carries hints of traditional funeral dirges foreshadowing Ajax's fate. You find yourself swaying slightly to the rhythm, your body intuitively responding to the music's emotional pull. The elderly man behind you hums softly, recognizing a traditional Salaminian motif woven into the composition, another layer of meaning accessible to those with specific knowledge. As the tragedy unfolds, the sun climbs higher, casting shorter shadows across the orchestra. The heat increases, yet discomfort fades from awareness as the dramatic tension builds. Ajax's confrontation with Odysseus, represented by a second masked actor who also plays Agamemnon and Menelaus through swift mask changes, reveals the core conflict between different conceptions of honor. You listen intently as Sophocles gives each perspective its due, refusing simple moral judgment. During a choral interlude, you unwrap another portion of bread, sharing some with the farmer beside you, who nods grateful thanks without taking his eyes from the performance. This small exchange of food strengthens the temporary bond between you, strangers connected through shared witness of artistic revelation. Around you, other such minor communions occur, whispered observations, offered sips of water, collective gasps at dramatic revelations. The audience becoming a complex organism responding as one body while containing thousands of individual experiences. When Ajax falls upon his sword, staged with technical brilliance using a retractable blade and concealed bladder of animal blood, the collective intake of breath throughout the theatre creates a moment of profound silence. Though everyone knows the myth's outcome, Sophocles has made it feel immediate, necessary, devastating. You notice tears on the face of the scribe seated before you. The farmer beside you has gone rigid, perhaps remembering comrades lost in battle. Each person receives the catharsis differently, filtered through personal experience, yet something universal transfers between stage and audience, a recognition of shared human vulnerability. The play's final scene, where former enemies Odysseus and Teucer debate Ajax's burial, resonates with particular force in a city still healing from recent wars. When Odysseus argues that even an enemy deserves proper rights, you feel the tension between justice and vengeance that has troubled Athens in dealing with defeated opponents. Sophocles offers no easy answers, but the question itself, publicly examined, feels like a civic contribution as valuable as any speech in the assembly. As the chorus delivers the final lines, mortals can never know what will befall them until it comes. Only afterward can they understand the pattern woven by the gods. You experience that distinctive mixture of exhaustion and invigoration that tragedy paradoxically produces. Something has been witnessed, processed, integrated into your understanding of what it means to be human in a world where greatness and destruction often spring from the same source. A moment of silent appreciation follows the play's conclusion before applause erupts. Not the wild acclamation of modern entertainment, but a measured acknowledgement of artistic and religious significance. The actors and chorus return unmasked for recognition. The transformation reversed, reminding all that what seemed so real was skillful illusion in service of deeper truth. The theatre buzzes with conversation during the brief interval before the next tragedy. All around you, citizens analyze what they've witnessed, debating Ajax's culpability, comparing this version to Aeschylus's treatment of the same myth years earlier, connecting the themes to current political tensions with Sparta. This discourse is not separate from the theatrical experience, but integral to it. Athens processing its values, fears, and aspirations through collective reflection on dramatic art. Sophocles understands the warrior's heart, comments the farmer, beside you, breaking his previous silence. My brother served at Amphipolis. He returned whole in body, but changed in spirit. This play speaks to what he cannot express. The personal connection to the dramatic material, shared between strangers, exemplifies theatre's function in your society, creating space for articulating difficult truths through the safe distance of myth. Before you can respond, trumpets announce the second production, Euripides' new trilogy, beginning with Iphigenia in Aulis. A different chorus enters, this time representing young women from Chalcis, their movements more fluid than the martial rhythm of Sophocles' sailors. Immediately, you sense Euripides' distinctive approach, where Sophocles presented established gods and heroes with reverent complexity. Euripides questions the very foundations of religious and social orthodoxy. The familiar myth unfolds with unexpected innovations. Euripides' Agamemnon is neither heroic king nor villainous father, but a man trapped between impossible choices: sacrifice his daughter or doom the expedition that all Greece demands. His Clytemnestra displays not just maternal grief, but political acumen, challenging male authority with reasoned arguments rather than mere emotional appeals. Most startlingly, Iphigenia herself transforms from passive victim to active participant in her fate, choosing sacrifice for greater purpose. You find yourself both disturbed and exhilarated by Euripides' treatment. When Iphigenia declares, "If Artemis desires my life, shall I, a mortal, stand against a goddess? Impossible. I give my body for Greece." The theatre divides in its response, some murmuring approval of her patriotism, others troubled by the rationalization of human sacrifice. The scribe before you scribbles notes on a wax tablet. Perhaps he studies rhetoric and finds Euripides' arguments worthy of analysis. The chorus's movement grows increasingly frantic as the play approaches its climax, their song questioning whether gods who demand innocent blood deserve human worship. Such theological provocation would be dangerous in other contexts, but the festival of Dionysus creates protected space for examining even the most fundamental aspects of Athenian culture. You recall debates in the assembly where speakers have been fined for less provocative religious statements, yet here, through the medium of tragedy, such questions become not just permissible but necessary. The play's conclusion, with Iphigenia's miraculous replacement by a deer at the moment of sacrifice, strikes you as less convincing than the psychological drama preceding it. You're not alone. Around you, citizens react with skepticism to this deus ex machina, the shipwright behind. You mutters, "Euripides always questions the gods until the final act, then summons them for convenient resolution." Yet even this criticism represents engagement with the playwright's ideas, exactly what the festival intends to provoke. The mid-afternoon sun bears down intensely now. You take small sips from your water flask, preserving enough for the remaining performances. Despite physical discomfort, the hard stone seat, the heat, the hours of concentration. Your mind feels extraordinarily alert, processing not just the dramatic content, but its implications for Athenian identity. This cognitive engagement across the entire citizen body, regardless of education or wealth, represents democratic culture at its most profound. Not just equal voting rights, but equal participation in cultural reflection. The final tragedy of the day comes from Philocles, whose work must follow the established masters. His treatment of Theseus's son Hippolytus shows promise, but lacks the distinctive voice of either Sophocles or Euripides. Yet even here, moments of beauty emerge, particularly a messenger's speech describing Hippolytus's fatal chariot accident, delivered with such vivid detail that many spectators flinch as though witnessing the actual event. The theatrical illusion, sustained through nothing more than words and gesture, demonstrates language's power to create shared reality. As this final tragedy concludes, the quality of light changes dramatically. Late afternoon sun casting longer shadows across the orchestra, bathing the eastern-facing seats in golden illumination, while those opposite fall into cooler shade. This natural transition complements the emotional journey from morning's ceremonial beginning, through the intense examinations of human suffering, to the more reflective mood that now settles over the assembly. The Archon returns to announce tomorrow's continuation of the festival, when Aristophanes' new comedy will provide necessary balance to today's tragic explorations. The crowd begins to disperse slowly, many lingering to discuss what they've witnessed, forming impromptu philosophical circles on the theatre steps. This extension of dramatic experience into public discourse represents Athens at its intellectual best, art not confined to performance, but integrated into civic conversation. You rise from your seat, legs stiff from hours of sitting on stone. Stretching subtly, you exchange farewells with those seated nearby. Brief connections forged through shared experience that may or may not extend beyond this day. The farmer clasps your forearm in the traditional gesture between equals before departing toward the rural den that is his home. The scribe rolls his notes carefully, tucking them into his belt pouch, perhaps to reference in future rhetorical studies. Descending the theatre steps, you move with the crowd flowing back into the city proper. Unlike the morning's procession, with its anticipatory energy, the afternoon exodus carries a contemplative quality. Citizens processing individually and collectively what they've witnessed. Snippets of conversation float around you. Arguments about Euripides' theological provocations. Appreciation for Sophocles' nuanced portrayal of Ajax. Technical discussions of choral arrangements and mask design. Your path home takes you through the agora, now relatively quiet compared to its daytime bustle. A few merchants still conduct business, primarily selling food and drink to citizens returning from the theatre. You stop at a wine seller's stall, purchasing a small jug of decent quality to share with your family as you recount the day's performances. Though not extravagant, this small luxury feels appropriate, a continuation of the festival spirit into your household. The wine seller, recognizing you as a regular customer, asks about the plays. Was Sophocles victorious again, or has Euripides finally won the judge's favor? His question reminds you of theater's competitive nature, not merely artistic expression, but a contest for civic honor and the olive crown that accompanies victory. You share your impressions, but acknowledge that official judgment awaits the festival's conclusion when all entries have been performed and evaluated. The Ajax was masterful, you tell him, but Euripides provoked more discussion. Who can say which the judges will value more? This uncertainty pleases you, that artistic merit remains genuinely debatable, not predetermined by political alliance or wealth. The wine seller nods, carefully wrapping your purchase in vine leaves to keep it cool on your walk home. As you continue homeward, the Acropolis looms above the city, its marble temples catching the late afternoon light. The Parthenon seems to glow from within, Athena's domain overlooking Dionysus's theatre on the slope below. Wisdom watching over emotional catharsis, civic identity embracing artistic exploration. The relationship between these divine spheres strikes you as quintessentially Athenian, rational and ecstatic elements not opposed but complementary, necessary counterbalances in both individual psyche and collective culture. The narrow streets of your neighborhood welcome you back to domestic reality. Children play knucklebones in doorways. Women chat while spinning wool in shared courtyard spaces. Neighbors exchange news of absent relatives serving in the fleet. After the heightened experience of tragedy, these ordinary scenes appear somehow both more mundane and more precious. The everyday life that heroes fight to preserve, that the gods both protect and disturb according to their inscrutable purposes. At your doorway, you pause to touch the small Herm statue that guards the entrance. A simple ritual acknowledging transition from public to private space. Inside, the courtyard feels cool after the theatre's exposed hillside. Your wife looks up from her loom, her expression questioning. Your children abandon their tasks, gathering eagerly to hear about the performances. This indirect participation in civic culture represents their primary access to public events until your son reaches citizenship age and your daughter marries. Setting down the wine jug, you prepare to fulfill your promise. Bring back the stories. How to convey what you've experienced. Not just plots, those are known already, but the particular alchemy of this day's performance, the way Sophocles made Ajax's suicide feel both inevitable and shocking, how Euripides transformed familiar myth into contemporary ethical debate. You begin with the festival's opening ceremonies, establishing the religious context that frames the artistic experience. As twilight deepens outside, your family listens to your retelling. You find yourself unconsciously adopting gestures from the actors, modulating your voice to suggest different characters. When you describe Ajax's famous deception speech, deliberately ambiguous about his suicidal intentions, your son's eyes widen with dawning comprehension of this linguistic subtlety. Your wife, whose intelligence has always impressed you despite her limited formal education, asks penetrating questions about Iphigenia's motivations that make you reconsider aspects of the performance. The wine is shared in simple clay cups, a modest echo of the libations poured for Dionysus hours earlier. This domestic symposium lacks the grandeur of the theatre or the philosophical refinement of wealthy men's drinking parties, yet it fulfills a similar function, creating space for examining ideas through shared cultural reference points. Your daughter, though only 9, surprises you with her observation about Clytemnestra's arguments, revealing an ear for rhetoric that might serve her well as a future wife managing household affairs. Late into the evening, your conversation continues, the plays extending their influence beyond the performance space into your home, connecting your family to broader Athenian discourse. Tomorrow brings another festival day, satyr plays and comedy offering counterpoint to today's tragedies. But tonight belongs to reflection, to processing the complex emotions and ideas theatrical experience has stirred. As you finally prepare for sleep, spreading your palette in the men's section of your modest home, you consider how thoroughly theatre permeates Athenian consciousness. The myths presented on stage provide common reference points across social boundaries, their reinterpretation by successive playwrights creating ongoing dialogue about values and beliefs. Even citizens who disagree vehemently in the assembly can find common ground in discussing artistic merit or character motivation in the latest tragic trilogy. Lying in darkness, you recall specific moments from the day, the perfect stillness of the audience during Ajax's final monologue, the audible gasp when Iphigenia reversed her initial terror and accepted sacrifice, the transcendent harmony when chorus and protagonist achieved perfect synchronization of movement and emotion. These memories feel as substantial as any real experience, perhaps more so for their concentrated intensity and shared nature. Sleep approaches gradually, your mind still processing the theatrical experience. Dreams begin to incorporate elements from the performances. Masks transform to reveal different faces. Chorus members move in patterns that reshape reality. Gods descend with messages both clear and cryptic. The boundary between waking thought and dream logic blurs, mirroring theatre's own liminality between real and represented, between human and divine, between individual and collective. This blending seems appropriate. Dionysus himself is God, of boundaries crossed and distinctions dissolved, patron of theatre precisely because drama creates transformative space where normal categories temporarily suspend. Today you have been a spectator and participant, individual and community member, citizen encountering both ancient myth and contemporary concern through the unique medium of Athenian tragedy. As consciousness fades, your final thought acknowledges theatre's essential gift to your city. Not escape from reality, but deeper engagement with it. Not simple answers, but more profound questions. Not mere entertainment, but collective soul-making. In the stone seats of the theatre of Dionysus, Athens does not just watch plays. It witnesses itself, its history, its possible futures played out in mythic form. Tomorrow brings another day of the festival, another opportunity to gather with fellow citizens and participate in this most Athenian of rituals, tragedy and comedy, suffering and celebration, the full spectrum of human experience condensed into dramatic form under Dionysus's watchful eye. As the theatre's echoes fade into dreams, morning light awakens the rocky outcrop where citizens gather not for stories, but for the raw, unscripted drama of democracy itself, where every voice seeks to shape the destiny of Athens. You wake before dawn, earlier than usual, your mind already alert with thoughts of the day ahead. This is no ordinary morning. The assembly meets today on the Pnyx, and matters of grave importance await the citizens' consideration. The herald's announcement in the Agora yesterday mentioned potential treaty revisions with Sparta, allocation of funds for naval repairs, and, most contentiously, a proposal to extend limited citizenship rights to select metics who have demonstrated exceptional service to Athens. The familiar weight of responsibility settles on your shoulders as you rise from your sleeping pallet. The room is still dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of dying embers in the household hearth. You move quietly, careful not to disturb your sleeping family. Your wife stirs slightly as you dress, her eyes opening briefly in the darkness. "May Athena guide your judgment today," she murmurs, before returning to sleep. Though excluded from political participation herself, she understands its importance, has listened to your recounting of debates, and sometimes offered insights that proved surprisingly valuable. Your chiton feels slightly rough against your skin as you drape and pin it. Not your finest garment, but respectable enough for assembly attendance. Democracy in Athens makes no formal distinction in dress between rich and poor citizens during political functions, though wealth often announces itself through subtle quality differences in fabric and dye. You secure your leather belt, its surface worn smooth from years of use, and slip your feet into well-made but aging sandals. In the courtyard, you use water from yesterday's collection to wash your face and hands, a physical purification that parallels the mental clarity required for civic duty. The water feels bracingly cold in the pre-dawn air, shocking away the last vestiges of sleep. As you splash your face, you mentally review the issues likely to be raised today. The Spartan treaty provisions particularly concern you, as your brother-in-law trades regularly with cities in the Peloponnese and has reported growing tensions that haven't yet reached official attention. You take a simple breakfast, a barley, cake dipped in watered wine, a handful of olives preserved from last year's harvest. Eating slowly, you listen to the city awakening around you. Through the courtyard opening, you hear neighbors beginning their day, the distant crowing of roosters, the occasional clatter of pottery as households prepare morning meals. This ordinary soundscape of Athenian life, the very fabric of existence your political decisions will help protect or potentially endanger, grounds you in the concrete reality behind abstract policy debates. From the household shrine, you take a small branch of olive wood, lighting it from the banked hearth fire. The flame catches quickly, and you use it to kindle a fresh lamp that will guide your steps through still dark streets. Before departing, you pause before the shrine's modest statue of Athena, patron goddess of your city. Grant wisdom to Athens. Today, you murmur, a prayer not for personal advantage, but collective benefit, the democratic ideal at its purest. The streets outside hold the peculiar quality of a city not yet fully awake. Your lamp casts elongated shadows as you walk, joining a growing stream of men moving toward the Nix, the rocky hillside assembly place situated southwest of the Acropolis. You recognize neighbors and acquaintances among them, exchanging brief greetings. Conversation remains muted at this hour, each citizen seemingly engaged in private contemplation of the civic duty ahead. The eastern sky has begun to lighten as you climb the path toward the Nix, the first golden rays of sun illuminating. The Acropolis to your left, the Parthenon catches this early light magnificently, its marble columns seeming to glow from within. The sight never fails to inspire a surge of pride, this visible manifestation of Athenian greatness, built through collective will and wealth. Today's assembly discussions may seem mundane compared to such architectural majesty, yet you understand that without sound governance, such monuments would be impossible. The path steepens as you near the assembly area. Your breathing deepens with exertion, thigh muscles working against the incline. Around you, other citizens make the same climb. Young men attending their first assemblies with visible excitement. Elderly citizens leaning on walking sticks but determined to fulfill their democratic responsibility despite physical difficulty. This simple act of ascending together symbolizes something essential about Athenian democracy. Participation requires effort, demands showing up, and involves physical presence in the space of decision-making. Cresting the hill, you behold the Nix in its simple grandeur. Unlike the ornate monuments that crown the Acropolis, the assembly space embraces a rugged functionality. A semicircular terrace carved from the hillside, facing a raised speakers platform hewn from natural rock. The space accommodates the 6,000 citizens required for a valid assembly quorum, arranging them so each can see and hear the proceedings. No elaborate decoration distracts from its essential purpose as the physical embodiment of democratic governance. Officials stand at the entrance, distributing the tokens that confirm attendance and entitle citizens to payment of the modest assembly stipend. 2 obols that partially compensate for a day's lost labor. Though wealthy citizens sometimes mock this payment as buying the poor's participation, you recognize its practical importance in ensuring that democracy includes not just those who can afford political engagement, but those whose labor typically consumes all available time. You accept your token, the small piece of bronze warm against your palm. The payment will help offset today's absence from your leatherworking shop, though not completely. Democracy extracts material sacrifice from its participants, time that could be spent on personal prosperity, given instead to collective governance. Yet this shared sacrifice creates common investment in decisions made, a practical as well as philosophical foundation for the system's legitimacy. Finding a place to sit proves increasingly challenging as more citizens arrive. You eventually settle midway up the slope, not among the front rows dominated by politically connected families, nor in the rear sections where the poor and elderly typically gather. The stone beneath you feels cool through your chiton, still, holding the night's chill despite the strengthening sunlight. You arrange your himation more comfortably around your shoulders, preparing for hours of attentive listening. Around you, the assembly space fills with the disparate elements of Athenian citizenry. Farmers from outlying dams whose calloused hands and sun-darkened skin speak of daily labor in olive groves and barley fields. Merchants whose more delicate appearance reflects indoor work, but whose shrewd expressions reveal commercial acumen. Artisans like yourself, whose hands bear the specific marks of their crafts, and the leisure-class citizens whose family wealth has allowed education in philosophy and rhetoric, evident in their confident bearing and carefully modulated voices. Despite these visible differences, a fundamental equality exists in this space. Each citizen possesses a single vote of equal weight. Each has the theoretical right to address the assembly. Each participates in the same political body, regardless of wealth or birth. This equality, remarkable in the ancient world, generates both the creative friction that powers Athenian innovation and the tenuous unity that maintains collective identity despite internal divisions. The morning sun now fully illuminates the assembly area. Officials move among the gathering, counting heads to ensure the quorum of 6,000 required for binding decisions. The low buzz of conversation crescendos as citizens debate preliminary positions, share information from personal networks, and form temporary alliances around specific issues. This pre-assembly discourse represents democracy's informal dimension. The relationships and information exchanges that shape formal proceedings without appearing in official records. You notice Sophocles among a group near the speaker's platform, the tragedian whose works you've applauded in the theatre of Dionysus, now appearing in his capacity as a strategos, one of the 10 generals elected annually to lead Athens' military. This intersection of cultural and political leadership typifies your city's integration of these realms, the artist as public servant, aesthetic excellence as civic contribution. When Pericles dominated assembly debates in previous decades, his close association with sculptors, architects, and philosophers similarly demonstrated this characteristic Athenian fusion. A trumpet blast cuts through the conversational din, signaling the assembly's formal commencement. The herald steps onto the speaker's platform, his powerful voice trained to project across the entire space without artificial amplification. Citizens of Athens, the assembly is called to order in accordance with the laws of our city and the customs of our ancestors. Let all who are not citizens withdraw immediately under penalty of law. A momentary shuffling occurs as slaves who accompanied elderly or disabled citizens retire to designated waiting areas beyond the assembly boundary. The herald continues, outlining the day's agenda in formal language that connects today's proceedings with centuries of democratic tradition. The ritualistic elements of this opening, purification sacrifices, prayers to protective deities, recitation of curses against those who might mislead the assembly, create a sacred frame around what follows, elevating political discourse from mere pragmatic negotiation to civic religion. The first item for consideration involves the naval treasury, specifically whether to allocate additional funds for trireme maintenance or save resources for potential future shipbuilding. The Proboliuma, preliminary proposal from the Council of 500 that shapes assembly deliberations, recommends immediate maintenance expenditure, but allows for assembly modification or rejection. You listen attentively as the first speaker mounts. The beam, the raised stone platform that physically elevates orators above the assembly, while symbolically placing them under its collective scrutiny. He identifies himself as Nicias, a name you recognize as belonging to a wealthy aristocrat known for conservative caution in military matters. Despite his elite status, he must persuade through reasoned argument rather than assert authority through birth or wealth, democracy's leveling function in action. Men of Athens, he begins, employing the traditional address that acknowledges the gendered nature of citizenship while emphasizing collective identity. Our naval supremacy forms the foundation of our security and prosperity. Each trireme represents not merely timber and bronze, but the accumulated skill of our shipwrights, the naval knowledge of our captains, and ultimately, the freedom of our city from foreign domination. His argument develops methodically. Current vessels require immediate attention to remain seaworthy. Delaying maintenance ultimately costs more than addressing problems promptly. Recent intelligence suggests potential Persian naval movements. that might threaten Greek waters within 2 years. You note his skillful integration of practical financial concerns with emotional appeals to security and Athenian maritime pride, rhetoric tailored to address both rational and non-rational aspects of public decision-making. When Nicias concludes, several hands raise requesting recognition to speak. The epistates, the citizen selected by lot to chair today's proceedings, points to a man you don't immediately recognize. As he approaches the beamer, a citizen nearby whispers that this is Cleon's protege, a newer voice in assembly politics, advocating more aggressive naval deployment against Spartan allies. The contrast with Nicias's cautious conservation of resources becomes immediately apparent. Fellow citizens, the younger orator begins more informally, establishing himself as one among equals rather than an elevated figure. While Nicias counsels repair of existing vessels, a necessary but insufficient approach, I propose allocating additional funds to construct 20 new triremes annually for the next 3 years. Athens faces threats not just from Persia, but from Corinth, Syracuse, and other cities jealous of our preeminence. Our naval power must grow, not merely maintain itself, to secure our position. A mixture of supportive shouts and skeptical murmurs follows this proposal. You consider the arguments from your perspective as a middle-class artisan. Naval expenditure generally benefits your workshop through increased demand for leather goods used in ship construction. Yet the funding would come from taxes that might increase your own financial burden. This balance between personal interest and collective benefit represents democracy's fundamental tension. Each citizen simultaneously self-interested actor and guardian of common good. 3 more speakers address the naval question, each building upon or refuting previous arguments. An elderly shipwright provides technical details about timber quality and maintenance schedules that add practical dimension to the abstract debate. A farmer from coastal Den questions whether the threat assessment justifies increased expenditure. When agricultural regions face challenges following last year's drought, the conversation evolves organically, each perspective adding complexity to what initially seemed a straightforward budgetary matter. The epistates finally called for a vote, instructing citizens to raise their hands in support of either the original council proposal or the expanded shipbuilding alternative. You raise your arm in favor of the original maintenance plan, swayed by the shipwright's practical expertise and concerned about tax implications of the more ambitious program. Looking around, you see approximately 2/3 of the assembly making the same choice. Democracy's visible mathematics, decisions literally counted in human bodies publicly committed to a position. With the naval matter settled, the assembly turns to its most contentious agenda item, the proposal regarding limited citizenship rights for certain metics. The herald reads the specific language. The council proposes that metics who have resided in Athens for more than 20 years, who have fought in at least 2 campaigns defending the city, and who possess skills deemed valuable to public welfare, may petition for limited citizenship rights including property ownership and legal protections, though excluding assembly participation and jury service. The assembly's atmosphere noticeably tenses. Citizenship defines Athenian identity, its exclusive nature, both practical foundation for privilege and philosophical justification for democracy itself. To modify its boundaries, even marginally, represents a potential transformation of what Athens fundamentally means. You feel this weight as the first speaker approaches the platform, Pericles' nephew Alcibiades, whose aristocratic lineage and notorious ambition make him a complex figure in assembly politics. Men of Athens, he begins with practiced confidence that borders on arrogance. Our city's greatness has always depended on its ability to attract the most skilled artisans, the most innovative thinkers, the most dedicated merchants from throughout the Greek world and beyond. These metrics contribute to our prosperity while remaining excluded from the privileges their labor helps secure. The proposal before you represents not charity, but pragmatic self-interest, binding these valuable residents more firmly to Athens through limited civic incorporation. His argument weaves together historical precedent, economic benefit, and subtle flattery of Athenian exceptionalism. Though you find his personal manner somewhat distasteful, his logic resonates with your own experience. The Egyptian papyrus, merchant whose materials supply your workshop, the Corinthian bronze worker whose techniques have influenced local craftsmanship, the Sicilian physician whose knowledge saved your daughter during last year's fever outbreak. These non-citizens contribute substantially to what makes daily Athenian life function. The opposing viewpoint comes from an unexpected source, not a conservative elder, but a relatively young man from a rural den, his speech patterns marking him as someone without formal rhetorical training. Fellow Athenians, he begins, with visible nervousness that gradually steadies as he continues. My grandfather fought at Marathon, my father at Salamis. They did not face Persian arrows to create a city where foreigners gain what belongs by birthright to true Athenians. His argument appeals primarily to tradition and identity rather than practical consequences. Citizenship is not merely a legal status, but a sacred inheritance, a connection to ancestors and gods that cannot be granted through decree. The metals must remain metals, useful to our city, but not part of its soul. Though less polished than Alcibiades' presentation, his emotional authenticity clearly resonates with many citizens, particularly those from rural dens where traditional values hold strongest influence. What follows is democracy at its most vibrant and challenging, a succession of speakers representing diverse perspectives and interests, each contributing fragment to a complex mosaic of civic self-definition. A shipowner emphasizes the practical benefits of incorporating wealthy foreign merchants who might otherwise take their business to competing ports. A stonemason worries about increased competition for contracts if skilled foreign craftsmen gain citizen protections. A philosopher suggests that Athens' intellectual leadership depends on remaining open to foreign influence while maintaining distinctive identity. You listen with full attention, mentally testing each argument against your experience and values. The democratic process demands this active listening, not passive reception of elite wisdom, but critical evaluation by every participating citizen. You find yourself inclined toward the proposal, recalling conversations with your own workshops. Syrian assistant whose technical innovations have improved your leatherworking methods. His 2 decades in Athens and service in the auxiliary forces during the recent conflict with Megara seem to exemplify exactly the type of metic the proposal addresses. The debate continues through midday, the sun now directly overhead, beating down on the assembly. Some citizens seek what shade they can find along the edges. Others drape hymations over their heads for protection. slaves circulate with water jugs, offering relief to those willing to pay a small coin. The physical discomfort becomes part of the democratic experience. Collective decision-making, not as abstract ideal, but embodied practice, requiring literal sweat and endurance. As debate extends, you notice developing patterns that characterize Athenian political discourse. Arguments increasingly respond to previous positions rather than restating prepared speeches. Occasional laughter ripples through the assembly when speakers employ effective wit or point out contradictions in opponents' reasoning. Rhetorical questions invite collective consideration. The shared vocabulary of mythological references and historical examples creates cognitive shortcuts that efficiently communicate complex ideas. Mentioning Solon's wisdom invokes an entire value system without requiring explicit explanation. The epistates eventually determines sufficient discussion has occurred and calls for the vote. This time, the physical division is more dramatic. Citizens instructed to move to either side of the assembly area to indicate their position. You rise, legs stiff from hours of sitting on stone, and walk deliberately toward the section supporting the proposal. The physical nature of this vote, literally standing with others who share your position, makes political alignment visible in human formation. The counting proceeds methodically, officials tallying each citizen present on both sides. The narrow margin becomes apparent even before official announcement. The proposal passes by fewer than 200 votes out of nearly 6,000 cast. Democracy's numerical reality translates complex moral and philosophical questions into countable units, producing definitive outcomes from profoundly contested values. The result will be recorded on marble stele and archived in the metroon, the physical embodiment of collective memory and accountability. With two major agenda items complete, many citizens begin departing, particularly farmers who must return, to fields and elderly men whose stamina has been taxed by hours of attentive participation. You consider leaving as well, as your workshop has orders awaiting completion. Yet civic responsibility compels you to remain for the final item, a report from returning ambassadors regarding Spartan treaty compliance, information potentially crucial to Athens' security and prosperity. The crowd's thinning changes the assembly's dynamics noticeably. Those remaining, predominantly urban dwellers with fewer immediate responsibilities or particular interest in foreign affairs, sit closer, together, creating a more intimate atmosphere for this final discussion. You find yourself near several leather merchants whose business concerns regarding Spartan trade parallel your own, their presence reflecting how material interests shape political engagement without necessarily determining it. The returning ambassador, a dignified man in his 60s with the excellent posture common to those trained in military bearing, provides detailed accounting of his delegation's observations in Laconia. His report avoids inflammatory rhetoric while clearly documenting concerning patterns, increased Spartan military exercises, ambiguous compliance with trade provisions, growing influence of anti-Athenian factions in Sparta's notoriously opaque political system. Unlike previous agenda items requiring immediate decision, this presentation primarily informs future deliberations. Throughout his speech, you note subtle differences in how citizens receive potentially threatening information. Some lean forward with expressions of grave concern. Others display skeptical distance, perhaps doubting the ambassador's assessment or confidence in Athenian military superiority. These variations reflect not just individual temperament, but different relationships to potential conflict. Those with sons approaching military age showing greater anxiety than elderly citizens whose direct fighting days have passed. When questioning begins, you gather courage to raise your hand, surprising yourself with this uncharacteristic public participation. The epistates acknowledge you, and suddenly all eyes turn in your direction. Standing with conscious control of your breathing to manage unexpected nervousness, you ask what the ambassador observed regarding leather trade specifically. Whether Spartan markets remain open to Athenian craft goods, or show signs of the exclusionary practices that preceded previous conflicts. The ambassador responds thoughtfully, noting that while no formal restrictions exist, his delegation observed increased promotion of locally produced goods in Spartan territories. A potential early indicator of economic nationalism that often precedes more explicit hostility. He thanks you for the question, acknowledging that trade patterns often reveal diplomatic realities more honestly than official pronouncements. This small interaction, your specific knowledge contributing to collective understanding, exemplifies democracy's aggregation of distributed expertise. With the sun now visibly declining toward western hills, the epistates formally conclude the assembly. The herald pronounces traditional closing formulas that echo those used by your ancestors generations earlier in this same space. Linguistic continuity connecting contemporary governance to historical foundations. Citizens rise, gathering personal belongings and forming small conversational clusters that continue debate informally as they descend from the Nix toward the city below. You walk alongside a neighbor, discussing the day's proceedings with the analytical thoroughness characteristic of Athenian political culture. Even with formal votes complete, the process continues. Citizens evaluating not just outcomes, but the quality of arguments presented, the performance of speakers, the procedural decisions of officials. This ongoing meta-analysis of democratic practice itself represents one of Athens's distinctive contributions. Governance not merely as a power exercise, but as a collective intellectual project, continuously refined through reflection. Did you find the shipwright's technical arguments persuasive regarding timber quality? Your neighbor asks, referring to the naval funding debate. This launches a detailed discussion comparing specialized expertise with broader strategic considerations in decision-making. Exactly the type of philosophical question that might occupy formal dialogues in the academy, here arising organically from practical governance experience. Such conversations occurring throughout the citizen body create a remarkable cognitive environment where abstract political theory and concrete decision-making continuously inform each other. As you descend back toward the city, the agora comes into view. The commercial and social heart of Athens, now bustling with late afternoon activity. The physical relationship between these spaces, the Nix where decisions are made, the agora where their economic and social consequences unfold, visually, represents the integration of political and practical life that characterizes Athenian democracy. Unlike modern separation between governance and commerce, Athens embeds these functions within walking distance, allowing continuous feedback between legislation and lived experience. Passing through the agora, you note various citizens already discussing the Assembly's decisions with those who couldn't attend, information spreading through social networks, formal outcomes generating informal responses that will shape future Assembly dynamics. Near the Stoa, a small crowd gathers around, a prominent philosopher questioning the conceptual basis of citizenship itself in light of today's decision regarding metics. The Assembly's concrete policy making thus immediately generates abstract intellectual exploration, another distinctively Athenian feedback loop between practical governance and philosophical inquiry. You pause briefly at a wine cellar's stall, purchasing a small quantity of decent vintage to share with your family tonight. The merchant, recognizing your Assembly token still visible on your belt, asks about the metric citizenship vote. His interest stems from practical concerns. Several of his suppliers are metics whose status change might affect his business arrangements. You provide a measured summary of the decision and its limitations, neither overstating nor minimizing its significance. This impromptu explanation represents another dimension of citizenship, the obligation to accurately transmit political information throughout the broader community. The afternoon light has softened to early evening gold by the time you reach your neighborhood. Children play in the narrow street while women chat in doorways, the domestic sphere continuing its rhythms regardless of political developments. Your own household comes into view, modest but respectable, its whitewashed, walls glowing warmly in the slanting sunlight. The contrast between the grand scale of Assembly deliberations and this intimate space of family life creates momentary cognitive dissonance. Democracy's peculiar demand that citizens navigate between collective and personal perspectives. Your wife greets you at the doorway, reading your expression with the familiarity born of years together. "Was it productive?" she asks simply, referring to the Assembly with the same phrase she might use for any other type of work. Her practical framing reminds you that democracy, for all its philosophical implications, functions fundamentally as collective labor, citizens working together to produce decisions that shape shared reality. Productive, but exhausting, you reply, settling onto the bench in your small courtyard. As you describe the day's proceedings, the naval funding allocation, the contentious citizenship extension, the concerning Spartan intelligence, she listens attentively, occasionally asking, clarifying questions that reveal surprising political acumen despite her formal exclusion from the Assembly. "So these selected metrics might have their own property now?" she asks, immediately recognizing practical implications for neighborhood real estate values and social dynamics. Her question highlights how Assembly decisions ripple through aspects of Athenian life beyond their explicit focus, the interconnection between political abstractions and daily material conditions that democracy attempts to bridge through citizen participation spanning both realms. Your teenage son returns from his afternoon lessons, immediately curious about the Assembly outcomes. His education now includes preliminary training in rhetoric and civic participation, preparation for his eventual citizenship. You describe the day's debates in educational terms, emphasizing not just results, but the strengths and weaknesses of various arguments presented. Democracy's pedagogical function, transmitting not only decisions, but deliberative methods between generations. Over the evening meal, simple but satisfying bread, olives, cheese, and the wine purchased earlier, conversation continues about political implications for your family specifically, and Athens generally. This domestic political discussion represents democracy's capillary action, formal deliberations branching into increasingly fine networks of interpretation and application throughout the social body. Even your young daughter, years from any formal political role, absorbs the vocabulary and concepts that will shape her understanding of the society she inhabits. As evening deepens toward night, oil lamps casting gentle illumination across your courtyard, you experience the peculiar fatigue unique to democratic participation. Not merely physical exhaustion from hours on the Nix's stone seating, but mental weariness from sustained attention, ethical strain from weighing competing values, emotional investment in collective outcomes. This holistic engagement represents democracy's comprehensive demand on citizens, not occasional voting, but integrated cognitive, ethical, physical, and emotional labor. Before sleep claims you, reclining on your simple pallet, your mind reviews moments from today's assembly that seem particularly significant. Not always the dramatic speeches or formal votes, but smaller observations revealing democracy's texture. The elderly citizen who walked with obvious pain to cast his vote on the metric question. The spontaneous murmur of appreciation when a speaker acknowledged the strength of his opponent's position before refuting it. The precisely equal time allocated to wealthy aristocrats and humble farmers. These democratic particulars, more than abstract principles, constitute what you find most valuable in the Athenian experiment. Sleep approaches gradually, your consciousness drifting between political concerns and personal matters. The boundary between citizen and private individual blurring as it often does in Athenian life. Your last coherent thought acknowledges both the imperfection and the miracle of your city's governance. How despite its exclusions and contradictions, despite occasional demagoguery and factional manipulation, the fundamental achievement remains remarkable. Ordinary men gathering peacefully on a hillside to determine collectively how they shall live together, bound not by a king's command, but by shared commitment to a process vulnerable yet persistent, as fragile and as stubborn as humanity itself. Thank you for spending this quiet time with us, drifting through forgotten echoes of history. If this story brought you peace, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs rest. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well, dream softly, and good night.